grow room. My video today is about compost tea. I'm going to make up a batch and show how I make it. Lots of videos on making compost tea on YouTube, lots of people big supporters of it. And the main benefits that are kind of cited is that you leach nutrients out of the compost into your tea, into your liquid, so you can apply that to your plants. And they say because it's in water form, it's more readily available for your plants. The second big benefit or positive thing with compost tea is if you aerate the tea and you provide some sort of food source along with the compost. A lot of people use molasses, but you can use sugar, maple syrup. You don't want to use honey, because honey has some antibacterial properties. But you add your compost, you add air, you add food for the bacteria, and you generate large amounts of aerobic, basically beneficial bacteria and microbes, which you can then add, it'll go into your soil, or if you spray it on the leaves of your plants. It's cited that helps with disease resistance. So you basically coat your leaves, and you're also feeding your plant that way too. The leaves will absorb nutrients, foliage feeding, and the beneficial aerobic bacteria will colonize on the leaves and help prevent against pathogenic fungus and bacteria and stuff like that from being out of form on the leaves. I can't really speak to that aspect of it because I've actually never sprayed compost tea on my leaves. I've only ever used it to water with. That's something I definitely want to try this summer. Another thing too is I've made tea before without aerating it. So it's basically just putting some compost in some water, letting it sit, dumping that out on the ground. Some videos people say it's not a good idea because you're going to get anaerobic bacteria building up in there, but I would just mix it up really well, try to get air into it. I dump my watering can in there and mix it up to get air into that liquid before I added it to my plants, and never had any troubles. So I think just making tea in general, you're basically just you're getting nutrition into your water and you're adding that to your plants. So I think it's a good thing to do every time you're feeding, or every time you're watering, is to be adding a little bit of nutrition and bacteria to your plants. But it does make sense to me for indoor use to do an aerated tea, because my experience is that if you throw some compost in a bucket of water and you just let it sit there, it starts to smell. Whereas when you make compost tea and you got that air going through it, if you have good compost to start with and you aerate the tea as it's brewing, it doesn't smell bad. So that's why I want to give it a shot again with using some air stones and aeration, and using it to water my plants. So we'll go ahead and we'll mix up a batch, and I'll let it brew overnight, and then we'll check it out tomorrow. Alright, so this is my compost bin setup. I was using basically this setup for a worm bin in my basement, but I got holes drilled in the side of this tote that they run all the way down basically to the bottom, and I tried to cover them up the best I could with cardboard. But when I had my worms in this bin and this one underneath, the worms worked their way through those holes, and some of them ended up drowning in the liquid that was collecting in the bottom here. So I decided to not use this setup for worms, and I'm going to do a updated video on my my worm bin. It's much simpler, but I figured this would work great for composting and then also for my compost tea. So what I've done is I've got some cardboard just on the top here, and I've got compost in here and stuff that's breaking down, and I just pour water through it, which will collect in the bottom tote here. And then, I mean, that liquid in itself is almost a kind of compost tea, because as it filters through the compost in the bin, it picks up those nutrients. So I'm just going to fill up my jug here, see if I can do this without making too much of a mess. So what I figure is I'm going to use a full milk jug here. So this is a gallon, 4 liters. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to use one of these, and then I'm going to use water out of my fish tank for the rest of the tea. Just let this fill here. You can see it's a fairly dark color. Okay, so it's pretty much full. And then I've got my potting mix here, which is very rich in compost. And I'm just going to, I've used these socks before for this purpose. That's why they're extremely dirty. My socks are normally not that dirty. I'm going to put a few handfuls of compost in each one of these. And then that'll be sitting in the bucket as well. People use paint strainers a lot of the time, and you know, the holes in the sock are they're definitely not as fine as a paint strainer, but they're fairly fine. So I'm not sure if using socks would work well if you plan on spraying your tea. You definitely don't want, you know, any big particles in there, because it'll plug up your sprayer. But I'm not sure. Maybe these would work. But yeah, I'll give it a go in the summer when I actually try spraying the tea on the plants. So I'll go ahead and I'll pack these full of some compost, and then we'll get the tea put together. Okay, so I got a little bit of water left in my 5-gallon bucket, and just some fish tank rocks in there, but that's no big deal. So I'm going to dump in. This is my compost liquid that I got from my compost pile. Okay, perfect. Alright, and the food source for the bacteria. Just using regular table sugar. I've looked up, and apparently this is fine. They say to use 1 tablespoon per gallon. 2, 3, 4, 5. Most people use unsulfured molasses. I don't know. I don't have that, so I'm using sugar. I'm also kind of going away from the normal kind of tea in that I'm going to add some extra stuff to it. I'm going to add a little bit of Epsom salts. And part of me wonders if this is not maybe a good idea, because I don't know, maybe adding this salt, only got a little bit there, but maybe that salt will, I don't know, be harmful to the bacteria. I don't know, but I want this to be quite a rich tea, so I'm adding extra fertilizers to it. I'm also going to add a little scoop of 20-20-20 inorganic salt fertilizer, water soluble, plant prod. Okay, and I got this new air pump. It's a 2-outlet. I can't remember what the the output is on it, like the air. But hopefully it works good. And I got some more tubing and a couple of these air stones, Elite 6-inch air stones. I ordered this stuff off Canadian Wholesale Hydroponics. There was a problem with my order to begin with, but I got that figured out, and they sent me my stuff very quickly. So yeah, good prices on there. So if you live in Canada, yeah, check that site out, Canadian Wholesale Hydroponics. They offer a lot of stuff for hydroponic, aquaponic growing, and just gardening in general. So I got my stones hooked up. These are my compost socks, which I will tie off probably to that bucket handle and have those dangling in there. And yeah, I will top the rest of this up with water, which I'm going to siphon out of my fish tank, and then fill the fish tank up with that fresh water there. So I'll get the air stones in here, I'll get the compost socks tied up, and get this thing full, and hopefully it brews nicely. So I've got a double outlet pump, but you can definitely, you could get away with just the single one. That doesn't have to be very powerful. And the tubing just fits over. You just make sure it's in nice and tight. And then, yeah, you could get away with a much cheaper single output pump. You can pick them up, you know, at your pet store or Walmart in the aquarium aisle, and you can get a pretty cheap air pump, I think for around like 12 bucks. I'm hoping this air stone is heavy enough that it will sink to the bottom. Okay, so I got my 2 air stones on. Wedges on pretty tight. A little bit of dish soap might have helped, but let's pop them in here and see how much they produce. A little bit of bubbles, but not a whole lot. That's kind of disappointing. I thought they'd be a lot more fizz than that, but we'll see. We'll see how they work. Okay, so there's the tea going. The air stones are actually, they're producing a lot of bubbles, lots of foam. So yeah, I'm actually quite happy with that pump. When I first put them in there, I thought, geez, these kind of suck, but they don't. They look like they're doing a good job. So yeah, just gonna let this brew overnight and start adding it to my plants. Hey everyone, so my compost tea has been brewing overnight, and it's got lots of foam on the top and looks pretty gross, but doesn't smell bad. I don't know. So show you guys. It's pretty yellow. It's not as brown as a lot of the compost tea I've seen online, but I don't know if that's because of the molasses or if that's because of some other reason, but yeah, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and water some of my plants with it. I'm not going to put a bunch on everything, just in case I made this wrong, or if there's just something not right with it. I'm not going to put it on all my plants at once. So I want to be a little bit careful and just try it out on a few plants, see how it does. So to keep it going, from what I've read, really you want to make a batch, use it all up, and you know, then make a new one. because the bacteria that are in there, they're going to consume that sugar or food that you've added. So I'm going to water some of my plants, and then I don't know, I might just throw a little bit more sugar in here, see what happens. I'm kind of going to go with until it starts to smell. I think it's probably okay, but yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of new to the whole aerated brewing, the tea, so I think I am going to look at getting some unsulfured molasses. Most people seem to use that, so I'm going to go with the kind of the common use, and I'm thinking that's probably what makes it browner. I've noticed mine's pretty cloudy. Seems like some of the teas online, they're quite transparent. They look quite clear. But to me, I mean, I'm thinking that maybe that cloudiness is just, it's got lots of bacteria in there. But I could be wrong. It could be cloudy for some other reason. But yeah, that's kind of my first batch of aerated compost tea. And I'm going to try it out on some of my plants, see how they do. And then, yeah, I think I'm going to get some of that unsulfured molasses for my next brew. But that's just a little bit of information on compost tea. So take care, everyone. Bye. And just remember to use the foam on top of your tea for washing your hair, shaving, and as a delicious topping on pie and coffee. Make your own compost tea lattes. They taste delicious, and if it's good for your plants, it's good for you.